Hello everyone! I'm certain since the post we made about wanting your OCs in our stories, you've waited in anticipation to see if you got in. Well, I'm finally here to tell this story, and I hope it's everything you hoped it to be. I know that a lot of you are sitting on the edge of your seats, so I might as well start with who we're going to be using as our main three in the storyline. Before I begin, I'd like to say that I loved all of your OCs a lot, and by no means is my decision on who to add as the main three reflective on your wonderful characters. My decisions were based on how well I thought they might fit with the story I was looking to craft, so don't get discouraged if your OC wasn't chosen for the main three. Your characters may still show up a little later in the story as side or background characters. Anyway, let's begin with our first member of the team. A character created by Hannah Rowan 8735 is Choco Akamichi. Her character was quite simplistic, being a member of the Akamichi family with a little bit of a blank canvas for me to help tell her story. Out of the many OCs I looked at, this was the first one that called out to me as a character I needed to have in the main three. So good job, Hannah Rowan. Our second character is by user AdamBeck3551. His character is named Hebimaru. As I read over Hebimaru's character sheet, I couldn't help but feel drawn in by his abilities. His character description sorta reminded me of Mu, the second Tsuchikage a bit, even though this character was from Suna. Besides that though, his usage of puppet limbs that split open like General Grievous really spoke to me. Reminded me a bit of Sasori, but with enough difference to distinguish this character from him, and perhaps even make for a good character interaction between the two should they ever meet. The inclusion of a desert sage mode reminds me a bit of the theory that Hashirama's sage mode was neither snake nor toad, giving an opening to homebrew sage modes. So I very much enjoyed this character and would like to include it. And the final member of our three-man squad will be a character created by Akuma-8. His character, Akuma Aikyu, was inspired a bit by Dabi from My Hero Academia. The introduction of a Kekkei Genkai with flames stronger than fire release made me think that we could further craft this into a deeper dive for the concept of blaze release, which so far Sasuke is the only one who has displayed it. With this character, his blue flames being similar to Dabi, as well as Azula if I'm being honest, make for an interesting ability with a potent recoil that has consequences to usage. These are the three characters I plan to put on our little three-man team. That being said, stick around because I'm hoping to include other characters that were submitted to the story. Some may be heroes, and I may even begin pulling some as villains too. That being said, it should be recognized before we start that I will have to take creative liberties with your wonderful characters. Certain backstories might need to be changed or recontextualized to make sure they fit with the story I'm hoping to tell, so I hope this doesn't bother anyone. If you will, you may think of this what if as only a single possible world for your OCs where they could have been slightly different. That being said, I hope I do them justice. Anyway, this was a very long intro, we should get into it as soon as possible, but just before we do, let me say, welcome to the Amagi. Before we begin, only 25% of our viewers are subscribed, so if you're a fan of the video, please like and double check if you are subscribed, and with that out of the way, let's get into the video. The Academy was something every prospective shinobi had to do. It wasn't uncommon, and in most cases, this was the only type of formal education in the village. If you didn't study here, you were likely homeschooled. Not that there's anything wrong with being homeschooled, I was actually homeschooled. Given the dangers of being a shinobi, most people who weren't interested in being one didn't join, and didn't want their children to join either, which led to many a person doing something else with their life, such as carpentry or food service. This had been the dilemma of Choco Akamichi. You see, her family was a proud line of shinobi with a strong connection to the man currently serving as Hokage. And while Choco was not fated to be in the team known as the Ino Shikacho trio, she still had a deep desire to honor her family. But don't think she never considered quitting just to become a ramen restaurant owner. I'ma give Ichiraku Ramen a run for their money one day. Caught between duty and desire, Choco never knew what she really wanted to do. She had two dreams instead of one like most people, but you know, that was okay. It meant that she had a lot that she wanted to accomplish in her life, and that drive was what would make her life interesting. Besides, it was a bit too late to drop out of the academy now. She had just now passed the final exams and was all set to become a genin. As she stood there, she took her headband for the first time with a sense of joy and accomplishment, knowing that she was doing her clan well. But she was hardly the only genin to be graduating. Not too far behind her, a boy wrapped up in bandages stepped forward. As he looked on at the leaf marking on the headband, he thought about the long road that had led him here. Suna and Konoha hadn't had a very good relationship. Hebimaru had been born in Suna, and his desire to become a shinobi had pushed him to joining the academy, where he had studied to become a practitioner of puppetry. Why, you may ask? Well, because he could. He needed to. He felt the need to prove himself. You see, Hebimaru was a very intelligent boy. He may have seemed like a mischievous class clown, but deep down he had a lot of dreams. He wanted to learn everything there was to know. Having been born with a disability in that he possessed no arms, most counted him out. There was no way someone like that could become a shinobi, they said. But Hebimaru had been studying hard. He had studied the greatest puppeteers in all of Suna, coming to admire the story of Sasori, who had once created a puppet arm for one of his own wounded friends. The possible applications for puppetry had set Hebimaru's mind aflame, which led him to coming up with and creating his own puppet arms. A hard process it was, but from birth he had learned to do many things with his feet, and due to that, once he had arms, his capabilities were above that of the standard shinobi. Some had called him the six-armed squid because of his limberness and his ability to use his arms and feet to wield multiple different weapons. But despite his new arms he liked to show off, it didn't stop the other kids from making fun of him. He thought it would make him cool, make him popular, but instead it had kids avoiding him. So when rumors of a foreign exchange student program came around, Hebimaru had to take it. Keeping his arms wrapped and bandaged, he was sure to keep others from knowing what his arms truly were for fear of becoming an outcast again. So far, he had managed to keep it hidden, and now he was finally becoming a genin. It seemed that things were finally looking up for old Hebi. Finally, the last person in line was a young man named Akuma IQ. His face displayed a deep distaste for pretty much everything and everyone. Honestly, he was a lonely kid. He had no friends, he talked to nobody, and he had no interest in gaining friends. He was more of the mind to join the Anbu, where nobody really needed to know anyone. With abilities like this, he was more suited for mass destruction than anything, and hoped to be a secret weapon for the Hidden Leaf. Last in line, he walked up and picked up his headband. A part of him felt as though he deserved this. A little bit of joy sparked in his heart before it was quickly overtaken by pessimism. I'm gonna have to be a part of a team now, and struggle to be recognized. He sighed. He too walked out. The day after, they all returned to the academy along with every other graduate. They were each given a room number where they would go. Inside of their classroom, a man stood by the blackboard. As he did, he looked at it. Should I write my name down? Or, nah, that wouldn't be cool, right? Or maybe He found himself pacing the floor. He was a man in his mid to late 20s, his hair brown and long down to the shoulders, a little messy, and a thin beard on his face to show style as opposed to laziness. As he paced back and forth, his blue eyes were filled with anticipation. He was told to display confidence, but all he could think right now was, what if they don't like me? He had gotten there 30 minutes early out of fear that he'd be late. He took a deep breath and tried to calm himself. As he stood there, suddenly he heard the door being messed with. Someone was coming in. He felt his heart stop. Irika peeked his head in. Kai? Kai's heart loosened. Irika, what's up? I just wanted to inform you that your students have arrived. Suddenly, Kai's shoulders tensed again. Thanks for letting me know. Send them in, he said with as big of a grin as he could muster. Irika looked at him with a smirk and a shake of his head. To be frank, Kai was a fresh jonin. Only about a year earlier had he been working with Irika in the school. But he'd been promoted to jonin after a heroic action during an A-rank mission he'd undertaken, and Hiruzen had told Kai that he should take on students. At first, Kai refused, but Hiruzen told him that he really needed to work on his confidence, and the only way to do so was to be thrown into a place of friction. So here Kai was. He took a handkerchief from his pocket and quickly wiped his face to make sure that the sweat on it was gone. He pocketed it quickly as his team walked in. They each took a seat and Kai stood there as awkwardly as could be. Silence passed for a few seconds before Kai began to speak. The first word from his mouth came out as a crack and a squelch before he cleared his throat to start again. Hello, my name is Kai Kabanoki of the Birch Tree Meadow. And you are? Choco smiled and shook her head. I'm Choco Akamichi. After this followed Hebimaru. I'm Hebimaru of the desert, but you can call me Hebi, sensei. After Hebimaru finished speaking, Kai looked over at Akuma, who remained silent. And you are? Kai asked. Akuma sighed and spoke. I'm Akuma IQ, Demon of the Hellblaze. That's an impressive title. Did you come up with it? Kai asked. The only answer he got was no. Kai stood there in awkward silence before clearing his throat and sitting down. Opening his water, he took a sip and attempted to clear his mind. It was simply awkward meeting new people and doing new things, but he would get used to it. After all, adaptability was a human trait, and he knew that everything would be okay. I think we should all get to know each other, he said. I have your files right here. I haven't read them yet. I wanted to go over them with you all. Shall we begin? He opened the first file. All right, let's see. Choco, you're a member of the Akamichi clan, correct? She nodded. Kai smiled. That's a very prestigious clan. I bet you make them very proud. It says you're proficient in your clan's hidden techniques, such as the expansion jutsu. That's a high-rank ninjutsu. Just how proficient are you with this technique? She sort of thought about it, her finger twirling through a loose strand of her golden brown hair. I can sort of inflate. I'm not as good at it as my father is. He can basically just grow to gargantuan proportions, but I sort of swell up like a balloon. That's okay, Kai said. Everyone starts from somewhere, and the fact that you've come this far already tells me that you've got incredible potential. He then moved on to Hebimaru. Wow, your file is impressive to say the least, Hebimaru. It says at the age of 5, you constructed your own puppet implants, and that during your time in Suna, as well as your transfer to Konoha, you've had a regular GPA of 3.7. That's higher than I ever had. But it says here that you've been reprimanded quite a few times for acting out. Class clown? Hebimaru chuckled a bit. I like to make people laugh, sir. Kai chuckled as well. There's nothing wrong with that, just so long as you know the proper time and place for it. He then opened up Akuma's file. Now, let's see. He began to read through the file. It says you came from Blackwood Village. Akuma said nothing. Kai thought about it. Pardon my asking, but wasn't Blackwood Village at the center of a massive attack? The whole place burned to the ground, everything scorched. Akuma stared through his eyebrows. You like touching on sensitive subjects? Kai raised his hands. No, by no means. I just wish to know more about you. We can skip that question if it makes you uncomfortable. Akuma looked away. Kai went back to his file. It says here that your parents brought you to Konoha when you were very young, and he looked up at Akuma and then back down. He cleared his throat and mumbled through the next part. Abandoned you. He rubbed his tear ducts. I really should have read this stuff before they got here, he thought to himself. Let's just move on to what you can do. It says you possess a certain Kekai Genkai that gives you an incredible mastery over Blaze Release? What's Blaze Release? Akuma, seeming to get a little fed up with the questions, looked to his Jonin. It's a type of fire style that surpasses all fire style. Kai quietly read over a bit more of the file that mentioned Akuma's personality as a bit of a lone wolf with a bad attitude. Furthermore, medical examinations showed that about 28% of his body possessed scar tissue from third-degree burns. Kai rubbed his face as he read it over. Looking up at Akuma, he began to think about how rough a life this kid had led so far. No wonder he's like this, he thought as he looked it over. I guess the world of shinobi hasn't spared him either. Kai closed the files and stacked them to be stored later. It's a pleasure to meet you all, truly. But I'm certain you all would maybe like to know more about me? If you open your desks, you can find my file there. It's all declassified information, so it's not anything too bad. Just enough to let you get to know me better. The students opened up the file and looked through it. Choco took it upon herself to read out loud for everyone. Kai Kabanoki, oldest son under the current clan patriarch, distant Senju blood. You specialize in flower release. She looked up at him. What's flower release? Kai chuckled nervously. It's a special Kekai Genkai that's common in the Kabanoki clan. It's derived from our connection with nature and various flowers. Due to this, we can generate various poisons found in various types of flowers. We have a bit of resistance to poison as well. This release gives us slight control over flowering plants. It's considered to be a derived nature release that some have studied and believed to be a relative of the wood release of Hashirama Senju. But we don't seem to have control over the wood as much as the foliage that grows from it. We can't control wood, but we can control vines, leaves, and flowers, things like that. Choco nodded. It says you were a chunin during the Third Shinobi World War? Yeah, I was there. I didn't do much of anything important, really. I just helped out where I could. Choco continued to read about it. It says you enjoy spending time doing nothing? You don't have any hobbies? Kai smiled awkwardly. I do have hobbies, but they're not really noteworthy. I prefer to just find someplace peaceful and just exist there. We got shafted on our jonin, Akuma said flatly. Kai looked at him and then down at the desk awkwardly. Hey, don't be an ass, Hebi said. He's a different kind, but I think he's pretty good. I have a hard time respecting someone so timid, Akuma said. He looks halfway ready to cry. Kai raised his gaze up in confusion. Akuma shook his head and scoffed. Kai cleared his throat. Regardless of what you think of me, I'm your jonin now. And if you have an issue with me, you're free to go talk to the Hokage. Maybe he can transfer you out. Kai stood. Anyway, until that happens, let's just assume that you're stuck with me. I told Hiruzen I'd do my best to lead the next generation, so lead I shall. He walked to the door. Please put the files on the teacher's desk and follow me. The 3 students did so. Kai took them outside. As he walked out into the warmth, he basked in the sunlight as the rays fell upon his skin. He could feel his body already producing vitamin D as it absorbed this energy. Nothing like a little sunlight to make you feel alive, am I right, team? He asked. Choco smiled and nodded. Akuma remained silent and Hebimaru looked up toward the sun. It's a lot less intense here than it is in the desert. The desert sun will scorch your skin, but this is nice. Kai turned around. So tell me guys, what should we do first? Choco looked around. Shouldn't we be asking you that? Kai nodded vigorously. Yes, of course, but I like to offer a little wheel to my students. Today is just the first day together. We should foster our bonds first. A team without bonds is like a model kit with no glue. It may hold together based on the tabs for a little while, but eventually it'll fall apart. So what should we do? Should we just talk? Should we train? Spar? What should we do? I want to fight, Akuma said, his skin seeming to give off a faint orange and blue glow. I'm not gonna lie. I'd like to test out my powers against the rest of the team. I want to know what you can do, Mr. Kabanoki. Kai looked at Choco. What about you, Miss Akamichi? Would you also like to spar a bit, or nah? Choco thought about it. Yeah, I guess we can do that. But let's make it interesting. Whoever wins gets to choose where we eat lunch, and the losers have to pay the winner's tab. Kai smiled. That sounds like a wonderful idea. Let's see what you guys are capable of. And so the group stood in a circle. Kai began to speak. Okay, team, this is gonna be a 4-way brawl. Everyone versus everyone. But let's set a few ground rules first. No maiming, okay? No use of techniques that could hurt or kill. Any technique can hurt or kill, Akuma said. Kai nodded. Yes, they can, but be conscious of your teammates. Try not to release enough energy that will permanently damage them. Please and thank you. Kai stood there for a moment looking at his group. As a leaf fell from the tree and hit the ground, they all jumped into action. As he had expected, everyone on the team targeted him first. That's because he was considered to be the biggest threat. Kai began to take evasive maneuvers to avoid their attacks. Finding a place to get his bearings, he knew he couldn't stay still for long. Choco was already coming at him with her expansion jutsu. She had inflated her body and was now rolling at him. Jumping out of the way, he saw Hebi coming at him, already loosening the wrappings around his arms to expose the quality wood finish of his prosthetics. They struck out at him, and even defending himself from them, he felt the tingle in his arms. Ouch, he said with each block. Ah, dang, are these made of wood or titanium? Wrong, it's mankono. It's considered ironwood, perfect for making strong weapons. But before the spar could continue, Akuma came out of nowhere with a blast of fire. I don't care if it's ironwood or firewood, it all burns the same. He kicked Hebimaru away before striking at Kai, his fists producing puffs of flames. Kai could feel the heat burning his skin as he took more strikes. He swept Akuma's legs, but the moment Akuma hit the ground, he tried a leg sweep of his own, his feet producing flames too. Kai jumped back. Calm yourself, Akuma, you're taking this a bit far. What's wrong, sensei? Aren't you capable of dealing with one measly genin? Kai hit the ground and took a deep breath. This kid was asking for trouble. Kai began to weave hand signs. As he did, suddenly a wind of cherry blossoms blew about them. From the ground below Akuma, a massive predatory plant emerged, coating Akuma in some strange fluid before pulling him inside its mouth via vines. As he was pulled inside, he growled and tried to light it up from inside with his flames, but found he couldn't move at all. He was slowly becoming paralyzed by the acid. Claustrophobia set in as a sense of helplessness washed over him. He felt as though his entire body was being dissolved by some caustic acid. Or, that's what Kai wanted him to think for a while. In reality, Akuma was simply lying on the ground, foaming at the mouth. Kai had put him under a genjutsu for the time being. I think you need a timeout, Akuma. Stay there while I play with our friends for a little while. Come and get me, guys. Y'all are it, he said with a heavy Kansai accent. Yee-haw, he cried out as he jumped from tree to tree. Choco and Hebimaru ran into the forest. They ended up following two different versions of Kai, each leading them in opposite directions. Choco followed her Kai until she found him perched upon a tree limb. He waved playfully. Hi. Hanging from the tree limb upside down, he spoke. So where do you think we should eat after we're done doing this? Oh man, there's this chicken joint down the road I've heard about. It's supposed to have the most succulent white meat you've ever seen. The breading is supposed to be so crunchy that it's the first thing you hear when you walk in. Kai began to drool a little. Not gonna lie, that sounds amazing. Well, if you win, maybe I'll take you there. Choco smiled. Putting her thumb in her mouth, she pretended to be blowing herself up like a balloon as she grew rounder and larger. Then she began to bounce about, into and off of trees at explosive speeds. Kai's eyes widened as he sat up and began to jump away to avoid her. Elsewhere, Hebimaru reached the end of the trail. It seemed to have gone cold. He saw no signs of anywhere else Kai might have been going. Dang it, I lost him, Hebi said. It was then that Kai gently descended from behind on a vine. He tapped Hebi's shoulder. Hello there. Hebi jumped forward and turned around, his smile visible under his bandages. Jonin Kabanoki, you are a bold one. It was then that Hebi's arms extended out to the side. They split in half, forming 4 arms, and in these 4 arms came 1 katana each. Kai's eyes widened a little as he pulled 2 kunai from their holster. Hebi's wrists began to spin rapidly, the katana held, forming what seemed like a saw blade. He drew closer to Kai, striking out. Kai caught the blades with his kunai, only for those 2 free arms to attempt to stab out at him. Kai jumped out of the way to avoid these strikes. He threw 4 shuriken at Hebimaru, only for Hebi's arms to raise their weapons to deflect the shots, sending them into the nearby trees. As Hebi drew closer, he smiled. What you must realize is that you are doomed. Oh, I don't think so. Kai weaved hand signs, causing vines from out of nowhere to reach out and grab each arm, binding up the rotors that were allowing him to move like this. Hanging there, he looked down. No fair, Kai-sensei. Kai crossed his arms, says the guy who pulled out 4 katana and started spinning them. The other Kai was jumping through the forests. From behind, Choco was bouncing, her body smashing through entire trees. Stop, you're gonna bring down the whole forest. Then stop running and let me squish you, she shouted. She came at him straight and fast. Kai dove out of the trees, hitting the ground and rolling to a stop. She zoomed right past and managed to put on the brakes. She turned around and saw him standing there. Jumping from the tree, she shifted the expansion to her right hand and tried to smash him as she hit the ground. Kai jumped back. He was going over his options here. He considered wrapping her in vines too, but Choco's strength was already through the roof. Even without a technique, he questioned if she might be actually able to beat him at a wrestling competition. So how was he supposed to subdue this tank of a girl? Genjutsu, he wondered? Maybe something else. He avoided her attacks and realized, I know, anesthesia. He weaved his hands together, and as she smashed the ground again, he jumped onto her hand, got real close, and exhaled the breath he was holding in. Flower release, dreaming lavender. His breath came out as a purple dust that, when making contact with her face, began to forcefully put her under. He jumped back. She kept coming at him. He had to give her credit. Her will was very strong. But just before her fist got lucky enough to actually get a hard hit in, Kai got luckier. His dust finally pulled her down. As she fell over snoring, he wiped the sweat from his forehead. Off to Never Neverland. As his clones pulled them back into the opening, he sat them down beside Akuma, who was still foaming at the mouth. Now I can see why you're a Jonin, Hebimaru said. Kai smiled, feeling his ego stroked a little bit. I don't know, you guys really pushed me. I knew I'd be public enemy number 1, but I at least expected you guys would try to take each other down too. Hebi shrugged. I guess you were just the biggest threat. Also, can I please be untied now? Oh, of course. Kai snapped his fingers, causing the vines to loosen and fall off. Hebi stood. What did you think of my arms? I thought they were very unique. I've seen puppet users before, but I don't recall seeing any puppet user using puppets as their own body parts. You haven't seen my full potential either, Hebimaru said. Kai looked at him curiously. What do you mean? What do you mean? Hebimaru pulled out a scroll. I actually have puppets I didn't use in battle yet. You want to see them? Heck yeah, show me. Hebimaru put the scroll down on the ground and summoned the puppets from inside. They were in the shape of snakes. This one I call Shiro Hebi. I made it out of ambrosia maple. The other one I call Kuro Hebi. I made it out of ebony. But by far my favorite is this one. He summoned a puppet that was about twice as big as the other 2. I call this one King Cobra. It's made out of bull oak. It's got many hidden secrets to it. Can I know one? Kai asked. This seemed to concern Hebimaru a little. I can't, Kai understood. You don't feel very comfortable revealing your secrets. I totally understand. The element of surprise is very important to a puppet master. Hebi thought about it for a moment. All right, I can tell you one. He opened King Cobra's mouth. Do you see these right here? Kai looked in and saw a slit within. The best part, Hebimaru said as he touched the side of the fang nearest to him, these things contain a powerful neurotoxin derived from certain types of plants. When loaded up, one bite from King Kobe here will leave someone completely paralyzed but conscious, unable to move as their body slowly begins to shut down. I hear it's very painful. Kai thought about it, his stare seeming to pass clean through the puppet snake. Yeah, it's probably very painful indeed. Hebimaru waved his hands in front of Kai's face. Earth to Sensei, you still with me? Kai snapped back to reality. Oh, yes, of course. This is a very impressive puppet. I'm glad that I didn't have to face it in combat. I may have resistance to certain poisons, but I don't know how far it extends. I'd certainly not like to die from neurotoxins on my first day as a sensei. Hebimaru sealed the snakes back up. I guess that's it for the spar. Wouldn't you say it's time for lunch? Kai nodded. Yeah, it is. He walked over and blew the antidote to his dreaming lavender into Choco's face before freeing Akuma from his genjutsu. Wait, where's the... Then he realized. That was all an illusion, wasn't it? Kai stood and smiled, dusting himself off. Guilty as charged. Akuma seemed a little angered by this, that he could get caught in such a genjutsu, but a little bit of a smile formed on his face. Maybe he'd been wrong about Kai. Maybe Kai wasn't going to be an absolute wash as a jonin. As Choco yawned the remaining fatigue from her system, she spoke. "What are we eating?" Kai replied, "To be frank, you made that chicken joint sound so good, I don't think I can resist. You gotta take us to it." And so they went off to eat. Kai, of course, paid for the meal. While it was a part of the bet that whoever lost had to pay the winner's tab, Kai didn't expect them to have that much money to begin with and decided to treat them. Through their spar, he learned quite a bit about them. His confidence in them had left him feeling comforted in their ability to survive in the shinobi world, and as for Kai himself, he felt that maybe he was capable of leading a team after all. And so, after their meal, as was the village ritual, Kai had a picture taken with his students, the caption Team 13 scrawled on the corner. Their future was looking bright, and only time would tell what adventures they might go on together. As they each came to the crossroads heading to their homes, Kai stopped and looked at his team. "Tomorrow's gonna be a big day. We'll officially head to the Hokage's office and request our first mission. I want you each to go home, get as much rest as you can, and report to Mission HQ tomorrow by 8 a.m. sharp. Capiche?" The three of them acknowledged it in their own way and headed off to their homes. Kai turned around and began to head home. As he did, he lit a cigarette. Normally, he didn't smoke, but today was a day worthy of it. As he stood outside of his apartment building, he took a puff of the little roll of tobacco. Looking at the picture taken of their team, he couldn't help but smile. Putting the butt of the cigarette out under his shoe, he entered his apartment complex, made it to his place, and went through the door. Finding a place of honor, he sat up his picture of his team. Calling it a day, he looked forward to what tomorrow would bring. A chance for their team to prove themselves, and a chance to grow closer to his new team. Besides, he saw a picture of the team he was once under, Team Ethan. As he looked at his team, he wondered where they were now. Perhaps he might see them and their students in the future too. And that's where I plan to call it for today. I know it was a little shorter than usual, but that's because I don't want to rush through or gloss over too much. I hope I've done some justice to your OCs, Hana, Adam, and Akuma. I hope you're pleased with your sensei too. As for those of you feeling a little left out, don't worry. I plan to include more OCs in the future, so just because you weren't mentioned in this episode doesn't mean you'll never be mentioned. So get ready for that next part. I'm already cooking the plot moving forward. Anyway, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell to be notified of all our upcoming videos. I'm sure you don't want to miss the next one. Your OC might appear in it. And before you ask, yes, we're still accepting OCs. We'll link the post below for you all to go to and submit your very own for a chance to be included in this epic tale. Hope to see you there. Until next time, peace out.